I never expected life to get so complicated after the split. At first, it felt like just a matter of logistics, coordinating the kids' schedules, managing bills, and deciding who would keep what. But the emotional toll hit me hard, especially when small reminders of the past, like a receipt or the scent of her perfume, would trigger a flood of memories. It felt like carrying an invisible burden every day, trying to stay steady for the boys. The turning point came when I realized it wasn't just about us anymore. It was about building a new normal for the kids. I had to let go of the anger, no matter how justified it seemed. The house, full of memories, became too tense. Tommy and I knew drastic changes were needed to make this new life work. As soon as we arrived, the boys ran to Lisa, excitedly pulling her toward her new place, a cozy one-bedroom condo. Inside, everything from her old life was set up, school photos, plates, even the same bed sheets. It overwhelmed her, and she quietly cried while hugging the boys. "Vince, I made more money working as a wrestling assistant after high school than I do now," my brother Tommy said as we went over his finances again. The 2 years since his divorce hadn't been kind. "Okay, Tommy," I said. "You make $52,000 a year after taxes, about $4,000 a month. After child support for Tommy Jr. and Frank, you're left with $3,000. "Anything for my boys," Tommy interrupted. It was true. His ex-wife, Brandy, used every excuse to keep the boys from him, even reporting him for missing work to volunteer at their school. But our boss, Mr. Alvarez, paid him anyway and even lent him the company van. Next, there's $1,000 a month in alimony for Brandy. That leaves you $2,000, I continued. Tommy slammed the table. "That's BS. She was almost done with nursing school when we married. Why do I have to pay alimony for 6 years? "You've got 4 years left," I reminded him. "It's to help her re-enter the job market." "She hasn't gone to a single class yet," Tommy muttered. "Then there's the mortgage and taxes, which take another $1,000, so you're left with $1,000. "Great," Tommy said sarcastically. "I work for a house Brandy gets to live in, and I sleep in my car." "Tommy, you don't sleep in your car," I joked, trying to lighten the mood. "Brandy gets to stay until Frank turns 18, then you can sell it, and yes, she gets 50%, I explained for the millionth time. "The court's just looking out for the kid's stability," I reminded him. "That's why you pay the mortgage, and she maintains the house." Tommy scoffed. "I still get called every time something breaks. Also, you still have to cover health and dental insurance for the boys, about $300 a month," I said. "Why am I still paying for Brandy's insurance?" he asked. "The family plan costs the same with or without her, and the court says you have to carry her until you're done paying alimony." "She uses that insurance against me," Tommy said, frustrated. "Every time it's my weekend, the boys aren't too sick to come over, but it's always just a cold or a scrape." "Tommy, the system is the system." "Yeah, and it's screwing me," he said. "After all that, I'm left with $600 a month." Just then, Lisa walked in with groceries and overheard Tommy. "How did quitting work out for you last time?" she asked knowingly. Tommy had quit his job in protest a year after the divorce, and our state's strict laws landed him in jail for 2 months. He quickly complied with the court after that. Luckily, Mr. Alvarez rehired him. As we sat there, my boys rushed in, excited to see Tommy and his dog Candy. The boys adored the massive, scarred Doberman, and Lisa, though still a bit uneasy around the dog, let them play outside. Watching Lisa with the boys, I thought about how different we were. She was tall and athletic, with striking blonde features, while Tommy and I took after our Italian roots, short, stocky, and dark-haired. Despite our differences, Tommy always appreciated that Lisa had the courage to tell him about Brandy's infidelity, even though it cost him his marriage. Later that evening, after the boys were asleep, Lisa and I were in bed. She was putting on lotion and asked, "How much this time?" $100, I said. Tommy Jr. and Frankie needed new shoes. Lisa slipped into bed wearing a nightgown I liked. "What's Tommy going to do? He's always borrowing money since the divorce." "Yeah, but Tommy's no freeloader," I said. "He's remodeled half our house to pay back the loans, installed the water heater, hung the porch fan. I can't fix anything, and he's a whiz with that stuff." Lisa fluffed her pillow. "Sounds like we got the better deal. Too bad Tommy didn't with Brandy." I moved closer to her. That's for sure. I was ready to call it a night, but Lisa surprised me. "Well, it's not all Brandy's fault," she said. I sat up. "What? Brandy cheated on my brother. How is that not her fault?" "Brandy was wrong to cheat, but your brother overreacted." I couldn't believe it. "Courts usually give custody to the mother, and Brandy was a good mom. but breaking up the family doesn't make her a great mother. Brandy didn't want the divorce, Vince. Tommy filed. I shook my head. Brandy didn't even apologize and kept seeing other guys. Lisa sighed. It wasn't like she was in love with them. One of them wasn't even serious, just a fling. I was stunned. That doesn't make it better. Lisa shrugged. Vince, I get it, but sometimes women feel invisible, like they're just a mom or wife. It's not about the Zex, it's about feeling wanted. I looked at her. Lisa, are you trying to tell me something about us? She leaned closer. No, I've never cheated on you and never will. I'm just saying Tommy let his pride ruin things. I rolled over, trying to calm down. Tommy's struggling and he's about to break. Lisa replied, You can't get blood out of a turnip. Let's sleep. 3 weeks later, I came home late and found some college kids parked outside. Inside, a huge guy was on my couch drinking my beer. Can I help you? I asked. Nah, I'm cool. You're Lisa's husband, right? She's my date tonight. I was floored. Lisa's date? Yeah, man. She made me jump through hoops for this date, but I'm excited. She's great, right? I headed upstairs and found Lisa getting ready, dressed to impress. Who's this guy in our living room? That's Randy, a wrestler from the university. I'm going out with him tonight. Lisa, what are you talking about? We talked about this, Vince, she said calmly. I need this. It's not about you or the kids. Lisa, this is insane. I'm telling you as your husband to stop this nonsense. She turned to face me. It's too late. Randy's already here. It's not too late until you leave, I said, heading back downstairs. Randy, you need to go. Randy looked confused but stood up. Lisa told me you were cool with this. I'm not, and I'd appreciate it if you left. Just then, Lisa came down. Randy, please wait in the car. After he left, Lisa turned to me. Vince, we talked about this. I thought you'd understand. I stood firm. If you walk out that door, we're done. It's either me and the kids or that. She sighed. You love me too much to let this end. Besides, nothing might even happen tonight. I stared at her. Lisa, if you walk out that door, I'll make sure you regret it. I'm not my brother. Without a word, she walked out, leaving the door closed behind her. I sat down, trying to calm my racing heart. This whole situation felt unreal. I couldn't believe what was happening, but as I snapped out of it, I realized something surprising. My love for Lisa was gone, not replaced by hate, just nothing. What I felt most was fear of losing my kids. For a moment, I thought about letting Lisa's behavior slide to keep the family intact. But I knew I couldn't accept her going out with other men. This wasn't the Lisa I had married, and I didn't love who she had become. My mind filled with the fear of losing time with my kids, like my brother had after his divorce. I thought through every option, from violent responses to elaborate plans, but they all ended with me either in jail or Lisa getting custody. Divorce would screw me over, and I'd lose my boys. She had trapped me. Then I came up with a wild idea, something so unexpected it might short-circuit the person Lisa had become. I checked on the boys. They were asleep, then stood in front of the mirror. This is going to hurt, I whispered, knowing I was doing it for them. A few minutes later, it was done. My shirt was torn, my face scratched, and my forehead bleeding from smashing it into the mirror. My nose and lip were bloody, and one eye was swelling, but I made sure my knuckles weren't bruised. Emergency. What's your emergency? The operator asked. My wife and her boyfriend attacked me, I said shakily. My kids are here, and I'm scared they'll come back. The operator reassured me help was on the way. I also texted my brother Tommy to come immediately. Tommy arrived first, shocked by my appearance. I told him to take pictures of my injuries. Then the police and ambulance showed up. His dog, Candy, wasn't happy with all the noise, so Tommy put her in the boys' room to keep them calm. By the time I returned home from the hospital at 3:30 a.m., the house was a mess. Tire tracks on the lawn, bushes trampled, and the porch railing damaged. Inside, Tommy was sitting with an ice pack on his face, his clothes torn, and a cop was writing in her notebook. What happened? I stammered. Tommy grinned, despite his injuries. You missed quite the night, he said. When Lisa came home with her boyfriend, things got out of hand. Lisa fought the cop, and the boyfriend and another guy jumped in. I tried to help but got knocked up. Then Candy tore into them, especially the boyfriend. She went straight for his lap, Tommy said, laughing. The chaos didn't stop there. Neighbors who were military came over and helped break up the fight before more police arrived. Eventually, Lisa and her friends were arrested. My thoughts snapped back to my kids. Where are the boys? I asked. They slept through everything, Tommy reassured me. The officer finished up and told me Lisa was facing multiple charges. She also reminded me to appear in court to get a restraining order. The next morning, Tommy went to Home Depot to get new locks for every door. I closed all our joint accounts, canceled credit cards, and Lisa's phone. After taking the kids to school, I filed for a restraining order, keeping Lisa 100 yards away from us. Then I hired a divorce lawyer, a tough one. I wanted the papers served before she even got out of jail, but the lawyer said there wasn't enough time. I was shocked when my lawyer started suggesting a separation or even couples therapy. Is this the same guy who tore into my brother's ex? I thought. I wanted a full-blown legal battle. Look, he said, we don't even know if your wife cheated, and it doesn't matter much legally in this state. What are you talking about? I snapped. You don't have any solid proof. No pictures, no witnesses, nothing concrete. All you know is she left with a group of people. They could have been going anywhere. It's not football season, I countered. And what kind of game goes until 2 a.m? He stayed calm. You've got a strong case with the attack charges and the restraining order. But you never know how a judge might see this. Do you want your kids growing up without their mother? Yeah, but I don't want to end up like my brother, barely seeing my kids, I muttered. My lawyer leaned in. You might still, even with your case. This is a no-fault state, and assets are split 50-50. I'll fight for you, but the courts are often biased toward the mother. Is there any chance you two could work this out? I shook my head. Just file the papers, I said, writing the check for his retainer. 2 days later, Lisa got out of jail. I'm not sure who paid her bail, probably a bail bondsman. They called asking if she could use the house as collateral. I refused. By then, I had packed her stuff into her car, parked it down the street, and left the keys and title in the glove box. The voicemails started piling up, Lisa claiming she hadn't cheated, that it was all a misunderstanding. She was calm as always, thinking she could talk her way out of it. But I knew she'd eventually try to use the kids against me. A few days later, at the school where I volunteer, Lisa and Randy, or Moose, appeared. Randy was still limping from Candy, my brother's Doberman. Vince, be reasonable, Lisa said. There was no cheating. Randy chimed in. Dude, drop the charges. I didn't touch you, and this could ruin my scholarship. They both started talking over each other, getting louder. I held up my hand and showed a recorder. You both need to back off. Randy, you're on bail for attack, and Lisa, you're violating a restraining order. Lisa tried to grab my arm. Stop being dramatic, let's talk. Randy blurted out, Dude, if this messes up my scholarship, I'm going to eliminate you. I turned and headed back to my minivan. When I hit the button for the automatic doors, 4 off-duty Metro PD officers I'd hired as security stepped out. Randy went silent as they cuffed him, but Lisa started yelling. Is this what you want, Vince? I'll take the house. Your 401k, the kids, everything. She ranted until the patrol car came to take them away. I made sure my recorder had plenty of memory left. The next day, I was floored to find out who bailed Lisa out, Tommy's ex-wife, Brandy. She thought it was funny to use Tommy's alimony payments, which I had lent him, to bail Lisa out. Now, Lisa was staying with Brandy in Tommy's house. Meanwhile, Tommy and Candy moved into mine. My kids were confused, but excited to have their uncle and his dog around. Lisa was fighting the divorce and restraining order, but she was running out of money for a lawyer. My lawyer had frozen her access to our funds. She was living off Brandy, but I knew that wouldn't last. One day, Tommy came into my office. Vince, just so you know, I'm going on disability. Are you okay? I asked, concerned. Yeah, I've been having dizzy spells since that fight at your place. Turns out disability isn't subject to alimony and child support is adjusted too. It didn't take long for Brandy to react. Her court date didn't go well. Her support was cut, and she was ordered to take over the mortgage. A week later, Brandy showed up at my door with Tommy Jr. and little Frank. After sending the boys to play, Brandy said, Lisa's staying with me and she's furious. She's planning to take everything. Kids, money, house. Let her try, I said calmly. Does she even have a lawyer anymore? Brandy glared. Here's the deal. Let's go back to the way things were. I'll convince Lisa to forgive you, and you get Tommy to pay what the court ordered. Forgive me? I scoffed. I don't want Lisa anywhere near me. Brandy raised an eyebrow. Does cheating run in your family? Ignoring her, I continued. You can take your deal and shove it. Tell Lisa I'm ready for a fight. Brandy, furious now, shouted, You're both fools. Lisa's cheating was nothing but a big makeout session. You're going to throw everything away over this? I stared at her silently as she tried to defend Lisa's actions, but I was done. Brandy finally blurted, "Okay, maybe Lisa gave him a head, but it was quick in the car on the way home. She even made him wear a rubber for that. But that's it. No real Zex, I swear." "You can't expect her to get that guy all worked up and leave him hanging. Even Bill Clinton said heads don't count as Zex," she added. I stayed quiet for a moment, then calmly replied, "Brandy, this isn't helping." "Come on, Vince. You've been with Lisa for 14 years. Once she gets an idea, nothing changes it. She didn't think it was cheating, and she wasn't going to do it again. She was disappointed with the date and was bringing him home to tell you nothing happened." I shook my head. Something did happen. Not just the head, but Lisa disrespected our marriage and our family. I've lost all trust in her. Without trust, there's no marriage. She had multiple chances to choose us over her date, and she didn't. Now it's my turn, and I choose my family. Brandy went quiet for a second, then said, "Vince, if you keep pushing this, you'll lose everything. Lisa will make your life hell, all because you can't get over some exaggerated makeout session. I bet you've done worse at a drunken office party." I looked at her, disgusted. "I don't know what kind of Christmas parties you go to, but no Secret Santa ever gave me a head for a $20 gift." Brandy muttered, "Well, a head would have been better than fruitcake." "Thanks for the advice, Brandy," I said, tired of the conversation. "Do you want me to get your kids?" "No," she said, walking away. "Tommy can keep them until Monday." A few days later, I was in my lawyer's office, and he didn't look hopeful. "What do you mean I might lose my kids?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Unfortunately, we got Judge Reynolds, who's heavily biased toward mothers. Even with the restraining order and attack charges, you could still lose custody. He won't see her as guilty until she's convicted." "This is a nightmare," I muttered. "What are my chances?" "Not great," he admitted. "This judge has given kids to pill-dependent mothers. Unless she's in jail, she's likely to get custody." After leaving the office, I called my brother Tommy and told him the situation. "What are you going to do?" Tommy asked. "Maybe I should just take the kids and run," I joked, half serious. "Don't do anything stupid. Let me talk to Lisa and see if I can work out shared custody." "Try, but Lisa won't budge." That night, at 3 a.m., I heard a car pull up quietly in the driveway. It was Lisa and Brandy, sneaking toward the front door. I retreated to the boys' room, locked the door, and called emergency. "Emergency? What's your emergency?" "My wife and her friend have broken into my house. I'm scared they're here to hurt me." "Stay calm, sir. Help is on the way." Lisa and Brandy started pounding on the door, yelling for me to open up. I told the emergency operator I was on the second floor and couldn't escape. "Find something to protect yourself," the operator urged. As the door began to break, I picked up the rifle I had nearby. When the door finally gave way, I fired. The blast tore through the door, striking Lisa and Brandy in the legs. They collapsed, moaning in pain. The police arrived minutes later. I dropped the rifle and raised my hands. As they cuffed me, paramedics rushed in to treat Lisa and Brandy. In the days that followed, my shooting was ruled self-defense, and the charges were dropped. Lisa and Brandy were in the hospital, recovering from their injuries, while Tommy moved in with his boys and Candy. Our house turned into a fun, chaotic boys' club, and even though life was far from perfect, we made it work. Tommy also sold his house, cutting Brandy out of any profits. He was thrilled to be free of that financial burden. But eventually, Lisa's public defender showed up at my door with more bad news. "The case isn't as clear as it seems," she said. "Lisa and Brandy were told you were planning to flee with the kids the night of the shooting." I started to argue, but she raised her hand. "Yes, I've read the report. There's no evidence you plan to flee. No packed bags, no large cash withdrawals, passports still in the safety deposit box, and your car had only a quarter tank of gas. Plus, the kids were on a sleepover next door." She paused, then added, "Yet you were waiting with a loaded rifle." "It was my dad's old rifle with old shells," I said, frustrated. "What's your point?" "A case could be made that you ambushed your wife, setting a trap," she said, leaning in. "I know your brother told Lisa you were taking the kids and running." "I didn't tell him to say that," I snapped. "He volunteered to talk to her about the divorce." She raised an eyebrow. "You knew Lisa wouldn't let you take the kids. You counted on her violating the restraining order." "That's ridiculous," I replied. "Which brings me to another point," she continued. "The restraining order might have been issued under questionable circumstances. You're dreaming if you think that'll work. Phone records will show my brother wasn't inside, and he arrived just before the police. He'd pass a polygraph. Do you really think I'd let someone strike me just to fake an attack?" I added, irritated. I'm not suggesting that, she said more calmly, but a man desperate to keep his kids might bend the rules. I leaned back, shaking my head. Ask my brother Tommy how fair the system was during his divorce. I didn't twist anything. Ignoring that, she continued. The assistant state's attorney, ASA, has offered deals to both Brandy and Lisa. Whoever cooperates first gets reduced charges. And why would I help with that? I asked. She softened her tone. It's in Lisa's best interest to take the deal, but the ASA wants to know if you'll oppose it. Why should I help Lisa after what she's done to me and our family? I asked, still angry. She betrayed me. Everything is going your way, she explained. If Lisa's convicted, you'll have full custody. But do you want your kids growing up without their mother? Do you want Lisa in prison for years? And what if the jury sides with her? If she's found not guilty, none of this helps your case in divorce court. I crossed my arms. Are you threatening me? No, she replied firmly. I just want you to think about this. 1. If you agree, Lisa pleads guilty, serves 120 days, and gets 4 years of probation. You get custody in the divorce. 2. Think of your kids. They'll need their mother eventually. 3. You loved Lisa for 14 years and she gave you 2 great kids. Doesn't that count for something? She paused, then asked, Are you religious? I blinked. Raised Catholic, church every Sunday. Why? Doesn't your faith teach you to hate the sin but love the sinner? I took a deep breath. I may hate the sin, but I'm not going to love the sinner in this case. She slid a file across the table. This contains medical reports about Lisa, her mental health, medications, and more. It might explain some of her behavior. I glanced at it, but pushed it back. I'm an accountant, not a doctor. Let me explain it simply, she said. After the surgeries, Lisa became depressed, and her doctors found she was also slightly manic. Early menopause threw her hormones off balance, which likely influenced her poor decisions. I stared at her, stunned. She's on medication now, and they've adjusted her dosage, she added. So this is all because of menopause? I asked, shaking my head. No, she clarified. It's not an excuse, but it does explain some of her actions. I stood up, looking out the window at my kids playing. Despite everything, Lisa had given me 2 amazing boys. Did I owe her for that? I turned back to her. Fine, I won't stand in the way of any deal, but here are my terms. She straightened up, listening closely. 1. Lisa doesn't fight the divorce. 2. She keeps her car and 35% of our savings after court costs. 3. I'll keep her on my health insurance, but she pays the deductibles. 4. I get full custody, and I decide visitation. I keep the house and my 401k. Done, she agreed quickly. Send the papers to me, and I'll make sure Lisa gets them. Brandy wasn't so lucky. She refused any deals, thinking she could win at trial. The ASA charged her with everything. Breaking and entering, conspiracy, attempted hijacking, and more. She wasn't convicted on all charges, but enough to land her 7 to 10 years in prison. Lisa, on the other hand, served her 120 days and often wrote letters to the kids, asking me not to bring them to visit her in jail. Her letters to me were long, filled with details about her meds and how she'd always struggled with depression. I never wrote back. Oddly, Tommy became her biggest supporter, always encouraging me to give her a break. That might be why, 120 days later, I found myself parked outside the county jail, waiting for Lisa's release. When she walked out, I barely recognized her. She was thinner, with a limp and a scar on her face. Her hair was short with streaks of gray. She seemed surprised when I approached and took her bag. Come to gloat? She asked flatly. No, I replied. I'm here to give you a ride. The bus won't come for hours. She shrugged, indifferent, and followed me to the car. After a silent ride, Lisa handed me an address for a halfway house. I kept driving without a word. Vince, this isn't the way to the YWCA, she said, confused. Gotta make a stop first, I replied. When we pulled into a familiar condo parking lot, Lisa gasped. She saw her car parked with our boys and Tommy holding signs that said, "Welcome home, Mom." Frantic, Lisa rummaged for makeup and tried to fix her hair. Vince, I can't let them see me like this. Relax, I said, parking the car. They've been waiting to see you. As soon as we stepped out of the car, the boys rushed to Lisa, excitedly pulling her out and telling her all about her new place, the pool, and how close it was to the house. They led her into the small, one-bedroom condo, where everything from the old house was neatly arranged, bed sheets, dishes, and school pictures on the walls. Overwhelmed, Lisa hugged the boys, tears streaming down her face as she looked around. After a while, the boys wanted to go to the pool, and Tommy took them, leaving Lisa and me alone in the condo. Sitting in her favorite chair from the house, Lisa asked, "What's the catch?" "No catch," I said, sitting at the kitchen table. "I can't have the mother of my kids living in a dump. Mr. Alvarez owns this place, and we paid 6 months' rent for you. After that, the rent's on you. We're not together anymore, but we're connected through the boys." Tears welled up in Lisa's eyes. "This takes such a weight off my mind," she whispered. "Tommy and I were thinking," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "The house is full of boys, and it's like we're living in a zoo. We could use Aid and Mother to help, cooking, cleaning, you know." Lisa laughed. "And this is legit?" "Totally," I replied. "You'd see the kids every day." "Really? Every day?" she asked, surprised. "Yes," I confirmed. "The house is just around the corner." Lisa hugged me, happy tears in her eyes. "When can I start?" For the next 2 years, Lisa had a key to the house and was there every morning to make breakfast and pack lunches. She stayed until the boys were in bed, though she eventually sensed my discomfort and kept her distance. The house was always tidy, and Lisa even got along with Tommy's dog, Candy, after some time. She also started taking community college classes and was at every event for the boys. Tommy's kids started calling her Aunt Mom. Despite encouraging her to move on, Lisa once said, "I'm almost 40, an ex-con with a limp and scars. People stare at me. Finding a man now? The odds are worse than being on a hijacked plane." She laughed bitterly. I told her, "Lisa, you still have a lot to offer. You don't need to stay here forever." Lisa had become more self-conscious, no longer wearing the outfits she once loved. She covered up in baggy tracksuits and avoided swimming, always staying out of the water, hiding her damaged legs. Then one day something happened. Tommy had taken the boys to a party, and I was in the shower after some yard work. I heard the door open and Lisa's voice. "I'm just putting towels on the racks," she said. "Be done soon," I replied. Moments later, I felt a body press against my back. "Vince, please," Lisa whispered. "I've waited so long." I quickly left the bathroom, grabbing a towel. "Lisa, listen," I began. "I used to love you, but I can't anymore. We have too much history." Her voice cracked. "I just need this right now. It has nothing to do with you or the kids." That phrase triggered a memory of her leaving for a date the night our marriage ended. "Last time you said that, you were leaving for your date," I reminded her. Lisa's tears fell as she wrapped her arms around me. "I'm not a bad person, Vince." "I know," I said. "But trust is gone. Even though things are better, I can't forget what happened." She nodded, defeated. "Okay, Vince, I understand. I just don't want to lose what I have with you and the boys." "Let's keep things as they are," I agreed. Lisa still kept her condo and spent time at the house when needed, but we never got back together. The boys loved the pool, and Lisa's self-esteem grew when she turned down a few dates. She seemed content with our arrangement, and honestly, so was I. I had my kids, my brother, nephews, and a dog, and clean laundry. Life's too short to worry about the rest.
"This cougar is incredible," he exclaimed. "I've never had a woman like this before." "Hey, is she gonna do me next?" came a voice from the driver's seat. "Just focus on the road. I'm enjoying my ride," the guy in the back replied. "If you're wondering how a married, middle-aged mom ended up like this, my ex-husband Vince mostly got the facts right. But there was a lot of miscommunication and medical issues on my part. I'm not saying it's Vince's fault, but a lot could have been avoided. Hindsight is 20/20ths, and we all wish we could turn back time." I needed to rewind about a month before that night in the back seat. 3 weeks earlier, Vince and I were in bed after Tommy, Vince's brother, had borrowed money to buy shoes for his kids. Tommy's divorce from Brandy had been brutal, and Vince was in a bad mood after hearing how Brandy was making Tommy's life miserable. We were talking, and I said something that set things in motion. "It's not all Brandy's fault." Vince sat up, surprised. "How is it not her fault? She cheated and screwed Tommy over," I tried to explain. "Brandy was wrong to cheat, but Tommy overreacted. You know courts favor mothers, and Brandy's always been a good mom." Vince didn't agree. "How is breaking up the family being a good mom? Brandy didn't want a divorce. Tommy filed. She wasn't ready to stop seeing other guys, but she was almost done with that phase," I said, hoping he'd see my point. "That makes it okay?" Vince asked, frustrated. "It was just sex, and bad sex, according to Brandy. If she'd told Tommy how she felt, maybe they could have worked it out. Cheating only happens if you don't tell your partner, I explained. Lisa, that's ridiculous. If Brandy had wanted to play around, Tommy might have been open to role-playing, but real cheating? Never. Tommy's not better off now, I added. Is it worth throwing everything away over a few stupid encounters? How many guys should he let slide? Vince asked sarcastically. 3, 5. Typical male response, I muttered. You're missing the point. Women face different pressures. We get judged by our looks and feel invisible as we age. So cheating's the solution? Vince asked. It's not about sex. It's about feeling admired and wanted. It's not cheating if the partner knows about it, I said, trying to get him to understand. Vince was quiet, then asked, Lisa, do you have something to tell me? I quickly reassured him, No, I've never cheated on you, and I never will. Later, we had passionate sex, but his reaction worried me. The next day, I found what I was looking for online, college students from the local university. After filtering through responses, I narrowed it down to 2 guys. 1, Randy, stood out. He was a communications major on a wrestling scholarship. At our second meeting, Randy pointed to a girl nearby. Maybe we could set your husband up with her while you do your thing, he suggested. Are you pimping out your friend? I asked. No, she's just got daddy issues, Randy said, looking nervous. She's fine with it. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Randy was nothing like Vince, tall, blonde, and muscular, while Vince was shorter and dark. All right, I said, sliding some papers across the table. These are for a medical exam, just to make sure you're clean. Go to this clinic and I'll get the results online. And remember, always wear protection. Mrs. F, if I'm getting tested, why the protection? Randy asked. Because I don't know what you and your friends with benefits are up to after the test, I replied, pointing toward Amy. Non-negotiable. Randy agreed, and I handed him my address and phone number, sealing it with a kiss. I left feeling excited, thinking Friday night would be interesting. But things started going wrong that evening. Vince's car broke down, and he came home in a foul mood. I didn't mention Randy, and the kids were being difficult. Vince ended up working late, and of course Randy showed up early with a car full of friends. I got Randy settled in front of the TV downstairs and rushed to get dressed. As I was finishing up, I heard Vince pull into the driveway. He came upstairs just as I applied the last bit of lipstick. Lisa, what's that giant doing in our living room? He asked. And what's this about a date? I quickly explained, reminding Vince of the conversation we had about my needs. I reassured him, this isn't like Brandy. We talked about this. It's not cheating because I'm being open about it. But Vince wasn't having it. Lisa, this is wrong, no matter how you spin it, he said, visibly upset. I'm telling you, as your husband and the father of your children, to stop. It's too late. Randy's already here, I said. Vince stormed downstairs and I followed. I found Vince and Randy standing chest to waist, glaring at each other. Randy, wait in the car, I told him. Once Randy left, Vince confronted me, furious. Lisa, if you walk out that door, we're done. Your choice, your family, or that. I brushed him off. Don't be so dramatic. You love me and the kids. Besides, nothing might even happen tonight. Randy will wear protection. Happy now? Vince wasn't buying it. If you leave, my love for you leaves too. I was irritated. Fine, let me go out this one time, and if you're still upset tomorrow, we'll talk. Vince didn't move. Stop this now or we're done. I walked past him and opened the door. The kids are in bed and dinner's in the microwave. Call if there's an emergency, I said, stepping outside. The night went downhill from there. Randy took me to a party, and while I initially enjoyed the energy of the young crowd, I quickly realized I was out of place. At the rave later, the loud music and smoke gave me a headache, and I stepped outside for some air. Randy followed me, getting too handsy, but I insisted, no glove, no love. When he grumbled about forgetting the protection, I tried to handle the situation before it escalated. But honestly, all I could think about was how much I wished I had stayed home. Maybe Vince and I would laugh about this one day, if we ever got past it. He leaned in for a big kiss. That was amazing, You did great, Randy said. Sure, I thought, kissing him back. After rounding up Randy's friends, we finally headed home. I was in the back seat with Randy making out. At least he was. I kept checking my watch, ready to put this disastrous night behind me. At least I knew one thing for sure. No more date nights like this. Vince would be glad to hear that. Suddenly, I thought about Vince. He'd been upset when I left, and I needed to find a way to smooth things over. Some kissing and a hand relief might bother him, but a few of his favorite meals and some good sex would probably fix that. Still, I needed more. Something convincing. Randy, I said, pushing him off me. What? Randy replied, sounding frustrated. I need you to come to the door with me and tell Vince we didn't have sex. Just confirm that nothing happened, I said. Randy laughed. That's true enough, though not for lack of trying. But what do I get out of it? Amy, from the front seat, tossed a box of rubbers. Is Randy really going to do her right here? She asked. Why not? Randy said. No deal, I insisted. If we have sex, it defeats the purpose. We can't lie to Vince. Then how about just screwing? Randy offered. Amy chimed in. Sounds like a good plan. Why do guys always want sex? I thought, swatting Randy's hands away. I had to think fast. Okay, no sex, but I'll give you a head, I said. That way it's not really sex. Randy shrugged. You've got some weird rules, but fine. I hurried through it, while Amy gave a play-by-play from the front seat. When it was over, Randy leaned back. That was incredible. Better than me? Amy teased. Hard to say, Randy replied. We pulled up to my house, and Randy and Troy followed me to the door. I was glad to see the lights on, meaning Vince was still up. As I unlocked the door, a female police officer stepped out. Are you Lisa, wife of Vince? She asked. Yes. Where is Vince? What's going on? I asked. Your husband is at the hospital recovering from his injuries, she said. I barely heard anything else after that. Vince, injured, hospital. I turned to run to my car, but the officer grabbed my arm and handcuffed me. What are you doing? I yelled. I need to see my husband. Randy stepped forward to help, but things escalated quickly. Soon, Tommy, Vince's brother, burst out of the house and tackled Randy and Troy. A full-on brawl erupted on the front lawn, with Randy and his friends fighting Tommy. Just as things were getting out of control, Candy, Tommy's Doberman, charged out and attacked Randy, clamping down on his groin. In the chaos, more people joined in, and eventually the police arrived, swinging nightsticks and yelling for everyone to get down. Tommy got shot, and I was almost trampled. As I tried to slip away to the garage, I was shot with a taser and collapsed. Jail was a nightmare. I didn't mind the lack of privacy or the conditions, but the worst part was not knowing what happened to Vince. Was he okay? What about my kids? At the bail hearing, I learned I was being accused of attacking Vince, and there was a restraining order against me. I couldn't go home or see my children. It was a mess, and I couldn't clear things up without talking to Vince. But the restraining order made that impossible. I managed to post bail, though our credit cards were declined. Luckily, I had an old emergency card, but I knew Vince and I would have a lot to sort out once this nightmare was over. When I finally got out of jail, I felt terrible. I hadn't showered in days, wore the same clothes, and barely ate. As I left, someone handed me divorce papers. I sat on the steps and cried. How had things gone so wrong? It took me 6 hours to get home, getting lost twice due to confusing bus routes, and I had to walk the last mile. I threw away my heels after the first 100 yards. When I arrived, no one was home and my keys didn't work. A legal envelope on the door had the restraining order and a note from Vince saying my car was parked down the block. The car was full of my stuff, and at least Vince had left me a full tank of gas. I took out as much cash as I could from an ATM and checked into a motel. I knew I had to talk to Vince, but first, I needed sleep. My plan was to catch him at our boys' school, where he worked as a lunch monitor. I fell asleep before I could even shower. Randy wasn't happy when I called. If I knew it was you, I wouldn't have answered, Randy said. I had to get a temporary phone since my other one got canceled, I explained. Look, Lisa, you said your husband was cool with everything. Now he's claiming we knock him up that night. He's got pictures and bruises. You know I didn't touch him. I might lose my scholarship over this. I know, Randy. I didn't expect Vince to flip out like this. If I can talk to him, I can get him to drop the charges. What do you need me for? Randy asked. I've left tons of messages, but he won't call me back. We need to catch him in person at the school. You were there. You can confirm nothing happened. You're not going to mention the hand and head, right? That stuff doesn't count. We need him to know there was no real Zex. Randy sighed. Fine, but what's in it for me? No more trouble for you. I've got leverage. If Vince and I don't settle, I'll take the house, kids, his 401k, and make the alimony sky high. You'd really do that? I don't want to, but I will. Vince loves the boys. If he knows I'll take them away, he'll cave. I'm willing to let it go this time, but he's running out of chances. You're cold, Lisa, Randy replied. The meeting with Vince went wrong from the start. I thought if we caught him off guard, he'd listen. But instead, he had cops hiding in our minivan. I was arrested for violating the restraining order, and Randy was arrested for threatening him. That was the final straw. Vince had blown his last chance. Getting bail wasn't easy. My parents were gone, and after the divorce started, I had no one to turn to. All our friends had sided with Vince. Everyone thought he was perfect. Good old Coach Vince. I was furious and determined to make him pay. The next day I was shocked when Brandy, Tommy's ex-wife, posted my bail. She hugged me as I left the county jail. Close your mouth, Lisa, you'll catch flies, Brandy teased. Thank you for posting bail, Brandy. You look great, I said. Brandy smiled and twirled. Thanks, I've got a job at a little shop downtown. It's barely minimum wage, but I love it, and Tommy's still paying me alimony. I use his money to buy new clothes. Plus, it's fun to be around the customers. Well, you look amazing, I admitted. Could you lend me some money to get my car out of impound and for a few nights at a hotel? Don't worry about it. You're staying with me, Brandy replied, laughing. Besides, Tommy's borrowing money from Vince, so technically it's Vince who's paying for everything. That's karma. I was stunned. What do you mean we're in the same boat? You know, cheating, stepping out. We both got caught having fun. Brandy, I wasn't cheating. Vince and I talked about it. He never said no, so I thought he was fine with me dating. Brandy raised an eyebrow. Really? I didn't know Vince was like that. If Tommy had let me have my flings, we might still be married. Well, Vince didn't exactly say yes, but he didn't say no. I took that as permission. But he changed his mind at the last minute. Brandy shook her head. That's rough. I even lined up a cute co-ed for Vince to keep him busy while you had your date. Too bad he blew it. Yeah, and after all that planning, my date was a disaster, I said. It was awkward and gave me a headache. I didn't even want to be there. Brandy nodded. Most guys are idiots, but I still like the attention. No, I didn't sleep with him. I just gave him a hand relief so he'd tell Vince nothing happened, I confessed. Then I gave him a head on the way home to make sure he'd vouch for me, but that's it. And now Vince is pulling this crap. Brandy smirked. Don't worry, Lisa. Once you get that fat check in the house, all this drama will be worth it. I used Tommy's 401k to go on a cruise, and it felt amazing. I stayed with Brandy at her McMansion, where she lived off Tommy's payments. My nephews were great, but made me miss my boys even more. I could only see them from afar at school, watching with binoculars from 102 yards away. It was heartbreaking. The legal battles dragged on. Vince's lawyer was stalling everything, and I was running out of money. I couldn't keep a lawyer since I couldn't pay the retainers. Vince kept renewing the restraining order, keeping me from my kids. I was determined to clean him out in the divorce once I found a lawyer who would take my case. Tommy pulled a scam, claiming a medical injury to avoid paying Brandy alimony. It took her a month to drag him back to court, where she got the short end of the stick. The court stopped the alimony, reduced child support, and made her take over the mortgage. She had to work full-time at a fashion shop, but it didn't pay much. Brandy tried to convince Vince to talk Tommy into returning to work, but no luck. She brought up a Christmas party right after Vince and I got married. reminding me of how drunk I was and how some guys were hitting on me. "Vince didn't think it was funny when they were all over you," she said, laughing about how Vince got their cars towed that night. I barely remembered, but it took me 2 weeks to get back in his good graces. The day before my divorce hearing, I found a young lawyer willing to represent me, though I had to promise him part of Vince's $401k. Brandy was thrilled to hear my case got assigned to Judge Reynolds, who had a reputation for being sympathetic to wives and mothers. She was convinced I'd get custody, the house, and a good settlement, just like her. Tommy stopped by that night, trying to get me to settle with Vince. "Screw him," I said, still angry. "I'm going to get everything in court." Tommy warned me that pushing Vince too hard could backfire, but I wasn't listening. Later that night, Brandy and I snuck into the house to get the boys, thinking possession was 9/10 of the law. Brandy had swiped a key from Tommy, but the boys' room was locked and Vince was awake. Furious, I pounded on the door, threatening to break it down. Then, out of nowhere, there was a loud boom, and the door exploded. I fell on the floor in pain, with smoke filling the room. I saw Brandy next to me, both of us hurt from Vince's rifle blast. When I woke up in the hospital, bandaged and handcuffed, I felt like my life was over. I had lost my kids, my legs were damaged, and my future looked bleak. I fell into a deep depression and was put on self-destruction watch. Eventually, I started hormone therapy through a clinical trial, which helped stabilize my mood. For the first time in years, I wasn't constantly swinging between highs and lows. One day, a public defender came in and offered me a deal: plead guilty, testify against Brandy, and get time served with probation. If I refused, I'd face a much longer sentence. She didn't sugarcoat it. If I went to trial, I'd be stuck in prison for years. But pleading guilty would cost me custody of my kids, and Vince would get everything in the divorce. I felt trapped. When I asked for time to think, she told me I had until she reached the door. "Brandy's getting the same deal. If she takes it first, you'll be out of luck," she warned. I tried to protest, saying Vince had set me up, but she wasn't having it. "Princess, if you want sympathy, look in the dictionary," she said coldly. Feeling hopeless, I knew I didn't have much of a choice. Everything I had wanted, to feel young, have fun, had spiraled out of control, and now Vince was getting everything. It wasn't fair, but it was the reality I faced. The public defender gave me a hard look. "Princess, I know the meds and therapy are making you feel better, but let's be real. You wanted to cheat on your husband and convinced yourself he was okay with it. You were going to go through with it, whether or not he approved. You got caught, and now you're stuck. Sure, your husband's story isn't great either, but you have to deal with reality, not what's in your head." No one was hurt by what I wanted. It's just unfair, I protested. Fair? Justice isn't fair. It's blind. This isn't a TV show where people search for the truth. It's quick and dirty justice. So decide, take the deal or risk it all. I sighed and signed the papers. Brandy refused her deal, thinking she could still get her old life back. She even planned to sue Vince for her injuries. The prosecutor piled on charges, and Brandy was found guilty on most counts. She got 7 to 10 years, maybe out in 4 with good behavior. While I did 120 days in county, my divorce went through. Jail was boring, but I passed the time with therapy and rehab. I wrote long letters to my boys and a few to Vince. My anger toward him faded, thanks to the meds. I didn't love him anymore, but I still felt something for him as the father of my kids. When Vince showed up to give me a ride after my release, I was surprised. I thought he was there to gloat, but I accepted the lift. We exchanged a few harsh words about the past, but I decided to drop it. Rehashing old fights wasn't going to help me see my kids. I was shocked when Vince revealed he and Tommy had set me up in a small condo nearby and that my boys were waiting for me there. I was overwhelmed seeing them again, and Vince even offered me a job as their den mother. It was perfect. I'd see my boys every day. Over the next 2 years, I settled into the role. The only hiccup was Tommy's Doberman Candy, who didn't trust me at first. After a few treats, though, the dog warmed up to me. I also started taking some community college classes and adjusted to the stares my facial scar attracted. I didn't need attention from others to feel good about myself anymore, and I focused on the kids. One Saturday, when Tommy had the boys at a birthday party, I found Vince singing in the shower, his voice as bad as ever. Seeing him, I felt a surge of emotion and decided to take a chance. I stepped into the shower with him, but Vince quickly told me, "Lisa, you're the mother of my kids, but we can't be together like this." I had hoped we could reconnect, but Vince reminded me of the last time I said, "I just need this right now in my life. It has nothing to do with you or the kids," the night that ended our marriage. His words stung, and I realized he still hadn't fully healed. I tried to explain that I'd changed. "I'm not a bad person, Vince." He responded, "It's not about being good or bad. It's about trust." I understood then that Vince wasn't ready to forgive, and we'd never be like we once were. I told him, "I don't want to lose what we have. Let's just keep things simple." Vince agreed, and though we didn't rekindle our old romance, I was content with the life we had now, raising our boys and maintaining a peaceful coexistence.